All right, what's going on? It's Bobby Skinner talking Giants, and the Giants lost in week one. Doesn't that sound really familiar? Because it sounds really freaking familiar to me that the Giants just always lose week one, except for twice in the last 11 years. And they usually lose in a way that just sucks the life out of the season for you. Last year, 40-0. This year, they get smacked by the Minnesota Vikings, a team they should not get smacked by, 28-6. It's going to start at the top with Daniel Jones. This was an awful performance for him. He really hasn't looked good at all since he came back from the neck injury. Or before then. This is like, to me, a little bit more brutal than the Cowboys game. Like, the only thing that made the Cowboys game last year, week one, more is that there was more expectations for that team. Where if you take away the expectations, like, the Cowboys are much more talented. This shouldn't have happened versus the Minnesota Vikings. And Daniel Jones, I mean, he just looked awful. 22 of 42, 186 yards, 4.4 yards per attempt, and then 2 interceptions. I mean, he was just awfully inaccurate. Nothing was on target. He wasn't, pressured or being pushed by time. What the Vikings did is they basically just put a lot of people in the box and made it seem like, hey, you got to get the ball out quick or whatever. And they dropped back, and he didn't know what he was seeing. Like, that's what the film showed with him. And then that paired with just inaccurate throws time after time. Like, it's just brutal to play with that, right? And even the interception at the end to Harrison Smith, it's a 4th and 7. Do you have to throw the ball? Yes, you do. But they drop back into a coverage, and you just decide, I'm throwing to Darius Slayton pre-snap, right? If you look at the backside of that, you may get Wan'Dale Robinson or Malik Neighbors breaking open if you hang on to it a little longer or try and create. Nope, I'm just going to fire it in the triple coverage, ends up being an interception. And again, was not pressured. The receivers, I thought, did all right. Now the pick 6 actually was on Brian Dable, right? And Andrew Van Ginkel even said that, the defender who had that, he said, I saw what set they were in, and he just threw it to me. I knew he had to throw it quick, and he just threw it right to me, because they put 3 wide receivers bunched together. They motioned Robinson behind them. Of course, that's where you're going. You're throwing a screen. But Malik Neighbors got a lot of attention, but he was still able to get 5 catches, 66 yards on 7 targets, right? That's on pace for an 1,100-yard season. Good, solid week 1 game for him. Nothing spectacular, but a solid week 1 game. And then Wan'Dale got 12 targets, but only had 6 catches because of Daniel Jones's inaccuracies. There's even times where, they ran all-out blitz. That means you got to throw the ball. You got to throw the ball quick, throw hot. Daniel Jones doesn't, ends up taking a sack. They have to, kick on 4th and long because of that. So there was just mistake after mistake and miss after miss. There's no comfortability. And again, you can't blame the offensive line, right? He was pressured on 38% of his dropbacks, which that is a good number. And a lot of it, the pressure was created by him holding on to the ball. Like, look at these stats for the offensive lineman. Andrew Thomas, 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, 0 pressures. John Runyon, 1 sack, 1 QB hit. JMS, 1 pressure. Greg Van Roten, he did the worst. 2 quarterback hits, 2 pressures, and then Jermaine Eleanor, 2 pressures. That's a really freaking good pass protection game for the New York Giants offensive line. And yet we still had all the time in the world. We didn't throw the ball down the field, right? All of training camp, we're going to push the ball down the field. There was 1 throw of 20-plus yards, and that must have been right at the line. It ended up being a 25-yard play to Neighbors, because there wasn't some 30-plus yard throw in there. So just kind of awful from Daniel Jones. And coaching stuff, like, I don't know why they thought they were going to get in heavy personnel. Like, the strength of this team is this receivers, not their tight ends and their running backs. They got in this heavy personnel. Maybe they're trying to work around Daniel Jones. I don't know, but it certainly did not work. Jalen Hyatt only ran 6 routes. There's something deeper there. I'm telling you. Ever since Hyatt got moved down the depth chart and Slayton became the clear starter, something happened there. There is something there. That's something to monitor. And then defensively, you don't feel good about the defense, but I mean, they only gave up 21 points, 312 yards, and then had 2 turnovers, right? That's a solid NFL game at the end of the day. But here's the disappointing part of the defense. It's not the coverage, because they let Sam Darnold complete all these throws and basically complete over 80% of his passes. The pass rush outside of Dexter Lawrence. Lawrence is a beast. 1 sack, 1 QB hit, 6 pressures. He's dominant. We knew he was going to dominate. Nothing. I'm so disappointed in Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, really, really disappointed. They combined the 2 of them together for 1 quarterback hit and 1 pressure in an entire game. That's what those guys, the strength of this defense is the pass rush, the pass rush, the pass rush. So you have to get after the quarterback. Brian Burns, like in his matchup last year versus the Vikings, didn't show up. Kayvon Thibodeau, it's year 3. You're the 5th overall pick. You need to be consistent on a down-in, down-out basis. Not to be a flashy player who plays good against bad tackles. You can't have that type of shit. You can't have DJ Davidson outperforming you as a pass rusher. You can't have that from someone that you just traded for and paid $30 million. You can't have that for the 5th overall pick in his 3rd year. You can't have that, right? The back end, I knew the back end was going to be bad, right? Cordell Flott gives up a touchdown on a pump fake to Jalen Naylor. Deontay Banks gives up 3 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. Not a good game for him, but I would have signed up for that if you told me those are the stats he was going to give up against a Justin Jefferson. McLeod was targeted on the sideline. Adoree got a bullshit pass interference on him. So defensively, go back and watch it. It wasn't the worst performance in the world, but it certainly wasn't good. But the disappointing thing is how bad the pass rush was outside of Dexter Lawrence. You can't have that. This defense cannot succeed with the secondary they have when you're performing like that. That's a bullshit performance from Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. All that hype for Brian Burns, you look at his metrics and say, this guy's not the most consistent, and it shows up week 1. So just a frustrating game all around from this Giants team. Right, just from multiple facets. Oh, and here's another note. Gunnar Olszewski re-injured himself in the pregame warmups. A thing that won't be remembered because you can't. Hey, it's not the Giants' fault he got injured in pregame warmups. He's been battling with injury for 3 weeks. The Giants didn't have a backup punt returner plan. Darius Slayton is not a backup punt returner plan, and it cost. He recovered it, but he fumbles a ball that just not prepared for. And did they have space on the roster? Yeah, they carried 51 guys. They had 51 guys on the ability to have a 53-man active roster for week 1 because they were playing cap gymnastics. So, a lot to fix for this team. And, I don't think Drew Lock is very good, but I don't know how you don't consider a quarterback change. I really don't. You can't live like this. You're going to go play the Cleveland Browns in 2 weeks? Right? You got the Washington Commanders week 2. I mean, that's a make or break game for this season and guys' jobs. Players, coaches, front office. Week 2 becomes a make or break game. So I hope you guys, we'll have a podcast. I'm going to rewatch the game. We're going to break it down a little more in depth. So check it out. Subscribe to the channel. And let's go, big boy.